What's up, everybody? I'm Jason, and this is the vlog for Friday, October the 1st, 2021, and I don't have much of a vlog for today. It's been a quiet week with respect to camera stuff, and I have been scrambling to get ahead on content. And I think that's going to be the big focus of what I'm going to talk about briefly. So, you may notice in a few of the upcoming videos, or most of the upcoming videos, that I have started using a teleprompter again. Have been doing a lot of these videos based. I've been doing a lot of these videos based on just extemporaneously presenting information. I put together a set of notes, and I go through the notes and I just talk about the notes as I have them written. And I like this. It's a good format, and it's a good thing to be able to do, to talk about something extemporaneously, especially if you're trying to be a, well, I don't want to say a subject matter expert, but if you're trying to give information about a subject, being able to talk about it extemporaneously, certainly, to me at least, indicates that you know actually what you're talking about. It's a lot easier to give the impression you know what you're talking about when you're reading a script. Who knows who put the script together, who knows what your qualifications or understanding is. And so I kind of liked doing things extemporaneously. I also felt it was a little bit more natural, and it was certainly a lot less preparatory work on my behalf because I didn't have to write a script. However, with going into the lighting series and almost everything that I have to talk about with the EOS R5 from this point forward, the material has gotten complicated enough that, yes, I know how to do it. I can do it on the camera. I know what's going on. But there's a ton of little details that I don't necessarily, like I may not necessarily remember or think of or talk about when I'm presenting a video. So I've kind of decided for at least some of the content. I'm not doing it for everything. That I'm going to sort of go back to using playing with having a teleprompter running and a scripted video. I don't know if that's the greatest thing, but I'm also more confident that I'm going to present everything that I want to present, and that everything that is relevant and important for the audience to get out of the video, doing it that way. So I do have some interesting stuff coming up on the topic of the vlog front. I'm going to start talking more about video in the coming weeks. I have already posted one video that's the beginning of a look at R5 video quality, but it's doing the still image processing approach, and I really kind of want to move on to actually looking at video, which unfortunately is a much harder thing to look at. It's a much harder thing to deal with because it's moving, and you can't compare like for like, or you can't compare things directly. But the problem that I've sort of realized in looking at how most people compare video quality, is that they will take still frames from different quality modes or compression modes or something to that effect, and they will freeze them and analyze them. And that's not really how I watch video. And I had sort of, or how anybody watches video. I mean, we don't freeze the video and look at a frame. It's not a still picture. And I had a interesting, call it epiphany, a thought, to that effect, and I think I want to talk about that a little bit before, in this vlog. So I guess that's what we're going to cover, we're going to talk about today. So I got more content coming, of starting to do video content for the R5, but I've got a bunch of stuff on the still side of things. I'm still not done with that. So if you're not interested in the video stuff, I'm going to start trying to intersperse that with some still stuff so I don't go completely off the video end of things. I think I'm starting to run out of things in the R5 to cover because I just don't know what else needs to really be talked about. There's playback stuff. There's certain setting things that I'm not sure if it's worth anybody's or if anybody's really interested in me getting into that. In fact, the funny thing is I don't really understand how to figure out what content is going to go somewhere or what content is interesting to people. I see all kinds of people that say, "Oh, you have to look at what your audience is interested in," and blah blah blah. And on Wednesday, I put up a video talking about the custom user modes, the C modes for how to configure and shoot them. And according to Google's, or YouTube, if you're a YouTube creator, YouTube will tell you how videos are doing compared to other videos for that time since the video has posted. So, like, if you look at the stats 2 hours after the video posts, it will tell you how that video is doing compared to all of your other videos in the first 2 hours that they were posted. And this video that I posted on the custom modes, I didn't think was going to be all that interesting. I don't want to say I thought it was too basic or something like that. I didn't really think that was going to be the most interesting thing to talk about with respect to the R5. And it turns out that in the first 2 days, that's sitting at the number one spot in my analytics, or whatever you want to call it, for videos that I have posted. So compared to the first 2 days of every other video that I've posted, it's beating them. Now, obviously, some of that is going to be because I have more subscribers. So there's a little bit now than I have in the past. So there's a little bit more of that because more people are going to be notified of the content. It's going to show up in more people's feeds. But generally speaking, most of the traffic that, I'm pretty sure the case with most YouTube channels as well, most of the content that, or the people that are looking at the video at my videos aren't subscribers. They're other people on YouTube. They're non-subscribers. And that is, that traffic's all being driven by the algorithm. It's also being driven by what people are looking for. So, when you start getting into the technical side of things, the how-to things, that kind of thing, I can't say this for certain, and I haven't done like super good research or anything on this, but I feel like less of the traffic that somebody gets on a video like that is algorithm clickbait, and more is people searching for how to do something. But I was really interested to see that that video did as well as it has in the first 2 days, roughly. So that's threw me for a loop a little bit. I'm not entirely sure where to focus or what to look at. Like, I don't necessarily just want to go through every setting in the menu on the R5 and do a video on it. I don't think that's a inherently necessarily useful thing. That I've been trying to focus more on the stuff that's not immediately obvious. Like, do you really need a video on how to use the shutter release? I mean, I really hope that's not the case. But, a lot of the stuff that I've been trying to focus on tips into the interaction between features or stuff that's buried a few layers deep that you may run into problems with when you're shooting, but not readily understand why or what's driving that. And then some stuff, just how to use the camera better, how to get more out of the camera. Because I think that's that's always a good thing to look at, is how to get more out of the gear you have compared to, as I always say, not chasing numbers and going and buying a new camera just because you don't think your pictures or your video is good enough. And so you go out and you buy something new and hoping that it will make things better. So that's kind of what's coming. As I said, I wanted to talk a bit about this epiphany / observation that I had talking about video quality. So I, what it comes down to broadly, and I'll start with this as sort of the starting point, is videos are not stills. And I've noticed a number of things in the video world that don't correspond to the still photography world. Now, at no point here am I saying that video people don't care about image quality, or video people don't care about camera capabilities or noise performance or dynamic range or any of that kind of stuff. But I want to advance the idea that they're different things. And the reason I'm advancing this is, as I said, I've started talking about video quality as sort of the dipping my toe into the water of talking about video for the EOS R5, or the video features for the EOS R5. I've done a lot of reading, studying, looking at, what higher end professional cinematographers, people from Hollywood, etc., are talking about, are saying that they're interested in, are saying that they want. And some of it too is also looking at what camera companies are delivering, because when push comes to shove, if the camera companies don't deliver the product that people want, unless there's great collusion going on between them, which doesn't really seem to be the case, people move to other platforms. And so the first observation that I have is that as what traditionally have been still form factor cameras, so the hybrid mirrorless DSLR shaped camera, has moved from being a still camera into being a video camera. And, along the same lines, costs have come down. It has become way more accessible to have better equipment. It's been way more accessible to shoot video on an interchangeable lens camera than it ever has been in the past. But what I find is that the press, so the photography press, sites like DP Review, I can't think of a whole, Imaging Resources, those kinds of sites, go into talking about specs, gear, etc., from the sort of still photographer's perspective. So I see a lot of talk from those sites about image quality and dynamic range. And again, I'm not saying that good image quality is not important or lots of dynamic range isn't useful. What I'm saying, they talk about that. And I see from the product of people that are discussing things. So, it's pretty clear to me that what the media talks about sort of trickles down into what the user base and camera companies and the marketing for cameras trickles down into what various user bases find most important or claim that is most important to them. So there's been a lot of, as digital sensor technology has made it practical and possible, because, quite honestly, shooting film in a, full frame, a 35 millimeter still format, so 24 by 36 millimeter sensor size, shooting video or cinematography on that it's done. It's called what is it? VistaVision is, I believe, the brand of that format. But it is prohibitive in some respects due to how big the film ends up needing, film cartridges, canisters end up needing to be, and how much film you end up having to go through. And so digital makes it super easy to shoot with a bigger sensor. I'm shooting this on a 5D Mark IV. It's a 24 by 36 millimeter sensor. It saves the data on a SD card that's, tiny, not that everything, obviously, cinematography is shot that way, but you get what I'm saying. Like this, which is a 64 gig card, but could just as easily be a 1 terabyte card, is a heck of a lot smaller than a roll of 35 millimeter camera, still camera film, let alone like a 10-minute shooting roll of 135 or 35 millimeter film being shot in a Super 35 camera, let alone a VistaVision camera. So yes, there's a aspect where the technology has enabled bigger frame sizes, bigger sensor sizes for shooting video. But what I see, and this is the observation that led to the epiphany, what I see in sort of professional cinematographers talking about video is there's far less emphasis put on frame size than there is put on image quality and dynamic range, which, or even to a certain extent, image quality. Like, yes, good image quality is important, but it is not, like, I don't see the same kind of nitpicking over a tenth of a stop of dynamic range or 2 or 3 megapixels that I see coming out of the still photographic community. And this is the thought I had, the epiphany. The reason for this is the picture doesn't matter as much. In video, the picture doesn't matter as much. Now, that's not to say that the picture doesn't matter or doesn't matter a lot or isn't important or whatever. But when you stop and think about it, if I'm making a still image, that still image is the end of the conversation. I take the picture, I make a print, and I freeze a moment in time of whenever I was taking that picture, whatever it was, landscape, wildlife shot, portrait, product photography, whatever. I freeze that moment in time, make the end print, the whatever you're going to look at it as, let's just say a print. And you can study that as a viewer in as much or as little detail as you are even remotely, you're interested in studying it. If you want to sit there and count the barbs on the feather of around the eye of the eagle that's the headshot that I printed, you can do that. There's nothing other than, your interest, or maybe if it's in a gallery, distance that you can stand or something to that effect. But there's basically nothing standing in your way to stop you from standing there and looking at, can you count the leaves on the tree? Can you count the hair on the model's hairs on the model's head? I mean, that kind of thing you can do with a picture, a still. And therefore, when you start talking about what's important in the creation of the still, there's a whole lot of emphasis that has to be put on the gear, the sharpness of the lens, the dynamic range is going to be important all the way. Image quality in terms of resolution. You're going to put a whole lot more emphasis on the size of the sensor, because that's going to control depth of field. It's going to control resolution as a whole versus, say, pixel size. It's going to have a serious impact on image quality throughout the entire discussion. And that's it. That's the end of the discussion. You take a picture, you produce a print, and that the only thing that contributes to that print is the camera, the sensor, and the printer, and your skill as a photographer, and your skill as the post processor and developer, or however you want to put it. We'll ignore skill though. We'll just talk about, we're just talking about the gear though. Now let's flip around and look at video. Well, first of all, the picture is only half of video. The other half is sound. And for something like this, for something like a podcast or a vlog or an expository piece, the sound is almost more important than the picture at all. I could put anything up as a picture right now, not just the video of me talking to the camera and talking to you. I could put up a picture of a cat or a cloud or a tranquil river running. And the meaning that I'm conveying, because this is expository, is all in the audio. It's not in the video, for at least this video. And even looking at the kinds of videos that I'm doing for the R5 or for talking about lighting or something, yes, there's important places in the video where showing how to do something is far more useful or communicative than just trying to tell people how to do it. It's the old cinematography thing of show, don't tell. But there's also a lot that the whole point or the important information is in the audio. And of course, the thing is going back to, for example, let's just say dramatic content. Yes, the picture potentially plays more importance than just the audio. So it's, instead of maybe for purely expository content, the audio maybe say 75% of the importance in the video. For dramatic content, the picture may be 75% the importance of the video. But compare that to, again, a still image where the picture is 100% of the importance. It's 100% of where the information is contained. With video, that the video quality, the camera's capability, the sensor size, etc., isn't the only factor in the end result. On top of that, we don't watch videos by just freezing the frame. And this is where, in my opinion, these sort of frozen static image tests kind of fall apart a little bit. Because when you stop the video and you stare at these one frame in isolation, again, in that same context as of a still photograph, you're not looking at the video as a whole. You're not looking at how effective the video is in doing what it's doing, and you're not looking at, and this is sort of even more at a base biological level, you're no longer dealing with the problems associated with vision and video, or vision and movement, or just the problems associated with movement in video in general. So we can look at a test chart and we can say, well, this is how sharp the lens is, or this is how sharp this quality mode is, or the standard high quality produces more resolution or more information than standard quality, for example. However, the question that never really, at least that I'm seeing, doesn't really then get asked or addressed is, how important is that? How important is that quality in the end resulting video, in the final product? Are we seeing, is that quality translating? So if I'm shooting at 4K high quality and you can resolve it, the camera could potentially resolve every hair in my beard, as opposed to, say, shooting at standard quality where it's not quite as distinct or sharp. Great. If I'm standing perfect, or if I am perfectly still, Then what happens when I move? What happens when because I'm not standing perfectly. I'm not sitting perfectly still. I'm talking, my mouth is moving, my face is moving, my body is moving. Not a whole lot maybe, but it's moving. And because it's moving, now we're talking about you're processing motion over frames as opposed to essentially being able to look at the same frame being repeated over and over. The same actually a side thing goes to noise. Noise in a single frame doesn't change because it's fixed in that frame, but noise in a video as a whole, it changes. It's evolving, it's mutating and moving, and it's not in the same place because it's random, and therefore it's masking different things, it's drawing your eye in different way, it's distracting in different ways, it's doing different things. And so I guess what my point here is that when you're talking about video quality, and the first thing that everybody wants to jump on is look at single frames, how representative is that of the results as in the final thing, in the final situation? And of course, test charts, and again, I want to be clear, I'm not saying that it isn't useful or that it shouldn't be done. It's the start, as far as I'm concerned, it's the start of the conversation, not the end of it. It's okay, we have this information, it's data, it's good, it's useful. Now we ask the question, how much impact does that have in the situations of actually shooting video and actually using video? And here's and I've been thinking about things like, so what actually impacts this? So we're talking about, say, we're talking about sharpness, we're talking about shooting in, say, 4K HQ instead of 4K standard quality on the EOS R5. When you're shooting video, what's actually sharp? Well, the background isn't. I mean, generally speaking, there's going to be depth of field, and the background behind me, if you can't see, for example, there's places on the horizontal blinds that next to me, that just behind my head, where you can't really make out the blinds anymore. Doesn't really matter if I record that on 4K for this lens, this aperture, that distance, this focus position, they're out of focus. The lens is already decimating the resolution of the world as it reaches the sensor to well below 1080p, never mind 4K. We talk about it as being out of focus, but, for instance, there's books behind me over this shoulder here on my shelf. You can't read the titles of them. In fact, looking at the big monitor that I have over next to me, you can't even really tell that there's titles on them. The out of focus, the depth of field, and the out of focus of the way those lenses are out of focus, that information, which you can think of as resolution, is gone. So when you're talking about video and you're talking about resolution and you're looking at resolution tests, you're really only talking about the resolution of the thing that you're focused on, in the bigger picture of the video that you're shooting. So you're looking at the resolution of the thing you're focused on. But then I'm moving, and it does not take a lot of movement in, shooting at 24 frames a second, about 180 degree shutter angle. So I'm shooting about a 50th of a second. There's a lot more in that than people want to talk about. They just want to rule of thumb, 180 degrees, that's all you ever need to do. But it's more complicated than that. But anyway, 50th of a second, roughly, shutter speed. When I edit these videos, if I want to grab a frame, I have to find a frame where I'm absolutely not talking or moving to grab a frame and not get motion blur. This is a 50th of a second. 50th of a second is not very fast, very high for a shutter speed. You start in talking about, when I'm doing wildlife photography, I'm at 1,000th of a second or faster to freeze whatever's going on. Because the bison, the bear, the zebra, the gazelle, the leopard, whatever, they don't just stop and let you take their picture. So even with a lot of, even with like a higher quality video output, shooting this on an R5 and 4K HQ versus standard quality, I'm causing motion blur. That motion blur is masking detail that the 4K HQ may be picking up, or may be able to pick up if it was a static thing, but it's not picking up because it's being masked by the motion blur. The other extension of this too, is sensor size. I see lots of places, things talking about, looking at the R5, and they will look at all the full frame options, but they won't look at movie crop. Well, on the R5, 4K shot in movie crop mode is downsampled from 4.8 to 5.1K, depending on whether you're doing Ultra HD or DCI 4K. That has a benefit in terms of image quality. Downsampling helps, or at least it can help more often than not. Shooting 1080p in the crop, it's done differently than shooting 1080p in the full frame sensor. At least that's what it looks like to me in the tests that I've started doing. That results in different image quality, but then the question becomes, I see again this prejudice, it seems to me, in still shooters going to video, or video shooters who aren't, I've talked before about being comfortable enough to take ownership of the decisions that you're making and say, I did this because this is what I thought would look good, or this is what I felt would be best, or this is what delivered the results I needed. This was my creative choice. That's something that takes a level of confidence in yourself, that saying, well, it's a full frame sensor, it's not crop, therefore it's better because it's bigger, doesn't take as much of a critical leap. It doesn't take as much, it's not as subjective, it's not as it requires as much self-confidence. I'm not saying that people who, everybody's not confident as a shooter or whatever, but my experience, at least for me personally, is it's way easier for me to say, always shoot in 4K, or always shoot in full frame, because it's better than shooting a crop, because it's bigger, and bigger delivers all of these and benefits, and enumerate the benefits, not putting the subjective need ahead of it. Shoot and crop because that gives you the reach to get better framing, better composition, better whatever. In the case of the still image 4K tests that I did, I found shooting 4K crop on an R5 produced better image quality, grabbing stills from it, than shooting 4K full frame standard quality. So if you wanted to go quality wise, it went 4K high quality, which is the 8K downsample, 4K crop, 4K full frame standard quality. Thought that was interesting. But like I said, there's definitely a level with video shooters, the serious high-end ones. Again, I'm not saying they don't care about frame size or image quality or whatever. They absolutely do. And people who work in Hollywood will go through massive hoops of for lighting and testing and whatnot. But in the end, I guess some of that is they will do testing, and they will not just take a still image and try to act as if the still image extracted from the video is the only meaningful measure in their processing. They're far less, as far as I can see, far less focused on everything has to be full frame. Now, maybe some of that also comes from the fact that until digital, Hollywood really didn't shoot what we're calling full frame now because of the problems with film, the limitations of film. Digital certainly makes that easier. But in general, like I said, from the video side of things, video people don't seem to put as much emphasis on frame size and the image quality of a still extracted from the video. The concern is the video as a whole, not the still extracted from it. And I think, like I said, the realization that I kind of came to is the reason for this is that the video, the sensor making the video in a movie or in video has a smaller comparable impact to on the overall resulting product than the sensor making the still image in a still image where there's no audio, there's nothing else. It's just that in the still image. Anyway, I think I've rambled for long enough for a video that I wasn't going to ramble that long on or didn't even really want to do. So, was almost thinking about not doing, I should say. So anyway, if you made it this far and you found this ramble interesting, please consider smashing that like button. If you have some thoughts on this please consider dropping a comment below. I'd be interested to hear what people have to say. Please consider also subscribing. As I said, I've got still running major stuff on EOS R5, how-to tutorials, guides, that kind of thing. So if that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.